I grew up with a Remington 870 in one hand and a compass in the other. My father, a man who spent 30 years tracking elk across the jagged spine of the Rockies, taught me that the woods are a language. If you do not speak it, you re a tourist. If you do speak it, you re a participant. He taught me to read the forest floor like a morning newspaper. The snapped twig of a passing buck, the matted grass of a bedding area, the specific, acrid scent of bear scat that is less than an hour old. I know the difference between the erratic, panic-induced thrashing of a wounded animal and the heavy, rhythmic gait of a predator. I do not get scared in the woods. The woods are math. They are biology. They are cause and effect. But that was before October 2021. Before the Olympic Peninsula. IV spent the last 4 years trying to rationalize what happened in that rainforest. IV told myself it was hypothermia. IV told myself it was carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty stove regulator. IV even tried to convince myself it was a psychotic break induced by isolation. But deep down, in the lizard part of my brain that still wakes me up at 3:14 a.m. drenched in cold sweat, I know the truth. Hypothermia does not whisper your name in your dead mother's voice. This was not a ghost story. This was something biological, something ancient, and it was hungry. The trip was supposed to be a reset. I work as a systems analyst for a logistics firm in Seattle. High stress, high caffeine, 12 hours a day staring at spreadsheets and optimizing shipping routes for Amazon third-party sellers. By the time autumn rolled around, my brain felt like it was filled with static. I needed the silence. I needed the wet, cold reality of the whole rainforest to strip away the digital noise. I spent 3 weeks planning the route. That's the kind of person I am. I do not do spontaneity. I use on X-Hunt maps, downloading the offline layers for high-resolution topography. I knew the exact drainage I wanted to hunt. A remote valley off the South Fork of the Hoh River, about 12 miles past the end of the maintained trail. It was public land, technically, but the terrain was so choked with Devilus Club and windfall that almost nobody went back there. Elk paradise. I packed on a Tuesday night. I laid everything out on the hardwood floor of my living room, checking it off a spreadsheet. My kit was dialed in. I was not some weekend warrior in cotton hoodies and denim. I was carrying a Mystery Ranch Metcalf pack, 71-liter capacity, loaded with 45 pounds of survival insurance. I remember holding my sleeping bag, a Western Mountaineering Versalite rated to 10 degrees. I ran my hand over the loft, feeling the down compress and spring back. Felt safe. It felt like a barrier against the world. I packed my shelter, a Hilleberg Acto Solo tent. Bomb-proof, green, low profile. For food, I did not mess around. I packed 5 days' worth of peak refuel meals, chicken pesto pasta and beef stroganoff. High calorie, high sodium. I counted out exactly 10 Cliff Bars, white chocolate macadamia nut flavor, and 6 packets of Starbucks Via instant coffee, Columbia roast. The weapon of choice was my Hoyt carbon-defiant bow. I waxed the string, checking for fraying. I spun the arrows on the kitchen table to check for straightness. Everything was perfect. Everything was under control. That's the seduction of gear, is not it? We buy these things, these Gore-Tex shells and titanium stoves, because they sell us the illusion that we can master the environment. We think that if we just spend enough money at REI, we become invincible. I left Seattle at 4:00 a.m. on a Thursday. The drive out to the peninsula is a decompression chamber. You start on I-5, surrounded by the aggressive glow of taillights and the industrial hum of the city. Then you hit the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, and the world starts to get greener, darker. By the time I passed Olympia and hooked onto Highway 101, the rain had started. Not the polite drizzle you get in the city. This was peninsula rain. A physical weight. It hammers the roof of the truck, a 2018 Ford F-150 with the EcoBoost engine, with a relentless, drumming rhythm that drowns out the radio. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, an old episode where he was interviewing a paleontologist about the Ice Age. They were talking about short-faced bears and dire wolves, monsters that used to roam the very land I was driving through. I remember sipping coffee from my Yeti tumbler, the liquid lukewarm and bitter, thinking about how safe we are now. We paved the world. We killed the monsters. I stopped in Forks for gas at a Chevron. It was 7:15 a.m. The air smelled of wet asphalt and diesel. I filled the tank, watching the numbers tick up. $85. $40. I went inside and bought a pack of beef jerky, Jack Link S-peppered, and a bottle of water. The cashier was a woman in her 60s with skin like parchment paper and eyes that looked tired of seeing tourists. "Heading up the hoe?" she asked, eyeing my camo jacket. "Yeah. South Fork," I said, going deep. She paused, her hand hovering over the register. "Be careful out there. River is high. And we've had weird reports lately." I chuckled, the skepticism instinctive. "Weird reports? Like what? Bigfoot?" She did not smile. "People getting turned around. Locals. People who know the woods. Just watch your footing." I walked out of there feeling superior. Locals getting turned around. That S just code for getting drunk and losing the trail, or relying on a cell phone battery that died in the cold. I had a Garmin InReach Mini clipped to my shoulder strap. I had a physical compass and the skills to use it. I was not going to get turned around. I parked at the trailhead at 8:30 a.m. The rain had softened to a mist that clung to everything like a cold sweat. I locked the truck, hiding my wallet under the seat, a habit from living in the city. I shouldered the pack, buckling the hip belt and tightening the load lifters until the weight settled comfortably on my hips. I checked my watch. A Casio G-Shock. 8:32 a.m. I stepped onto the trail, and the silence of the rainforest swallowed me whole. The first 5 miles were deceptively easy. The trail along the Hoh River is a flat, muddy artery that winds through massive stands of Sitka spruce and western hemlock. These trees are ancient, titans that were saplings before Columbus set sail. They tower 200 feet above you, their branches draped in hanging moss that looks like rags of torn velvet. The air here is different. Oxygen-rich, heavy, and smells of fermentation. Every breath tastes of decaying cedar, wet ferns, and the deep, loamy musk of soil that has never been dry. I moved at a steady 3 miles per hour pace, my boots, Kennetrek Mountain Extremes, eating up the mud. I liked the sound of it, the squelch thud of hiking. It was hypnotic, quieted the spreadsheets in my head. Around noon, I reached the point where I planned to leave the trail. I checked the GPS. I was about a mile past the Olympus Guard Station. The plan was to bushwhack south, cross a ridge, and drop into a nameless basin that looked promising on the topo maps. This is where the real work began. Bushwhacking in the Olympics is a full-body contact sport. You do not walk, you swim through vegetation. Salal brush waist-high and tough as wire. Devil-esque club with spines that can pierce canvas. And the windfall. Massive trees lying across the forest floor like fallen gods, slick with algae. I scrambled over a rotting cedar log, my hands slipping on a patch of slime. My glove, a mechanic's wear tactical glove, smeared through a patch of orange fungus. Felt gelatinous like cold fat. I wiped it on my pants, grimacing. By 4:00 p.m., I was exhausted. My legs burned, and the sweat under my base layers was starting to chill as the temperature dropped. The GPS said I was 6 miles from the trail, deep in the drainage. I found a flat spot near a creek, a small shelf of land protected by a grove of hemlocks. This would be home. I set up camp with practiced efficiency. First, I cleared the ground of pine cones and sticks, creating a smooth footprint. I pitched the Hilleberg, staking the guy lines tight to withstand the wind. The nylon snapped taut, a reassuring sound. I unpacked the stove, a jet boil flash. I poured water from the creek, treating it with a sterapin, watching the blue UV light glow in the murky water. I boiled 16 ounces and poured it into a bag of Mountain House beef stroganoff. While the food rehydrated, I sat on a log and just listened. That was the first time I felt it. Usually, the woods at dusk are a riot of sound. The varied thrush with its mechanical, buzzing call. The chatter of Douglas squirrels. The wind in the upper canopy. But this valley was silent. Not quiet. Silent. It was a heavy, pressurized silence. like the air in a room right before a bomb goes off. No birds, no wind, just the low, steady rush of the creek. I frowned, chewing on a piece of jerky. Atmospheric pressure, I told myself. Storm front coming in. The animals are hunkered down. It made sense. It was logical. But then the smell hit me. It wafted in on a slight breeze from the ridge above me. It was not the metallic scent of elk or the musky odor of bear. It was sweet, sickly sweet, like milk that has been left in a hot car for 3 days, mixed with the copper tang of old pennies. I gagged, covering my nose with my fleece collar. I stood up, scanning the treeline. The dense wall of ferns and moss stared back, impenetrable. Dead animal, I muttered aloud. My voice sounded flat and small in the vastness of the trees. Wind shift brought the scent down. I tried to eat my stroganoff, but the appetite was gone. The creamy, salty noodles tasted like ash. I forced down half the bag for the calories, then sealed the rest in an odor-proof sack and hung it in a tree 50 yards away. Standard bear protocol. Night fell fast. In the deep timber, it does not get dark gradually. The light just fails. By 6:30 p.m., it was pitch black. I crawled into my tent and zipped the door. I stripped off my damp outer layers and slid into the sleeping bag. I turned on my headlamp, a black diamond spot, and read a paperback ID brought, a thriller by Lee Child. I tried to focus on Jack Reacher beating up bad guys, but my ears were straining against the nylon walls. I kept my Glock 20, loaded with 200-grain hard-cast bullets, right next to my head. I eventually drifted into a restless sleep, the kind where you half awake, dreaming of falling. I woke up the next morning to the sound of rain. Hard, driving rain that turned the world into a gray blur. I unzipped the tent vestibule and looked out. Fog had rolled in, thick and cotton white, reducing visibility to maybe 30 yards. The trees were just ghostly silhouettes. I made coffee, the warmth of the cup seeping into my cold hands. The sickly sweet smell was gone, replaced by the clean scent of wet pine. I felt foolish for being spooked the night before. Just nerves, I thought. City brain adjusting to the wild. I spent the morning glassing the opposite ridge with my Swarovski binoculars. Nothing. No movement. Just rain and trees. Around 1:00 p.m., the rain let up slightly. I decided to hike up the ridge to check for sign. I grabbed my bow and my pack, moving slowly through the wet ferns. I was about a half-mile from camp when I saw him. He was standing in a small clearing, facing away from me, staring at a massive cedar stump. My first reaction was annoyance. I had hiked miles off trail to get away from people. To find someone else this deep in the bush meant my secret spot was not a secret. "Hey!" I called out, keeping my voice low but firm. Did not expect to see anyone back here. The figure did not move. He did not flinch. I took a few steps closer, my annoyance shifting to caution. Something about him was wrong. He was wearing a red flannel shirt, the cheap kind you buy at Walmart, cotton, completely soaked through. Jeans, soaking wet denim clinging to his legs. And on his feet, white New Balance sneakers. Mud-caked, ruined sneakers. No backpack. No rifle. No gear. He was standing 6 miles deep in the Washington wilderness, in near-freezing rain, dressed for a backyard barbecue. "Buddy?" I said, louder this time. "You okay?" Slowly, painfully slowly, he turned around. He looked to be in his 40s. Pale skin, pasty and slack. His hair was plastered to his forehead. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. They were wide, unblinking, and vacant. Not the vacancy of shock, the vacancy of a doll. He smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. It was just a muscular contraction of the lips, exposing teeth that looked too yellow, too large. "Water," he said. His voice was weird. It sounded scratchy, like a recording being played back at the wrong speed. There was a metallic burr to it. "Yeah," I said, my hand instinctively drifting to the knife on my belt. "I've got water." I reached for my Nalgene, keeping my eyes on him. "You look like you in a bad spot, man. Where your gear? Where your car?" He took a step toward me. His movement was fluid. Too fluid. He did not stumble over the roots. He just glided. Water, he repeated. Exact same intonation. Exact same pitch. I uncapped the bottle and held it out, arm extended. Here, take it. He did not look at the bottle. He looked at my neck. Water, he said again. Then he tilted his head. Turned around. My blood ran cold. The phrase the lady at the gas station had used. But the way he said it, it was mocking. He was enunciating the words like he was tasting them. Look, I said, stepping back. I've got a satellite phone. I can call search and rescue. Stay here. The man's smile widened. It stretched too far. The corners of his mouth seemed to pull back toward his ears in a way that anatomy should not allow. Satellite, he whispered. Phone. He took another step. Stay back, I barked, my hand moving from my knife to the grip of the Glock on my chest holster. I did not draw, but I made sure he saw it. I'm serious. Back off. He stopped. He looked at the gun, then back at my face. The vacancy in his eyes vanished, replaced by something sharp. Malign. Intelligence. Okay, he said, and this time the voice was different. It was not scratchy. It was smooth, deep. It sounded almost exactly like my own voice. Okay, he repeated, mimicking my inflection perfectly. He turned around and walked into the ferns. He did not run. He just walked, fading into the fog. I stood there for 5 minutes, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I listened. I heard footsteps moving away, crunching on the litter. Then silence. I did not hunt that afternoon. I turned around and double-timed it back to camp. My mind was racing, trying to categorize what I had just seen. Meth head, I rationalized. Some junkie from Port Angeles wandered out here to cook or hide. Got lost. Brain fried from drugs and hypothermia. The mimicking? Echolalia. A symptom of catatonia or shock. To fit. It was a logical explanation. Drugs and exposure make people do crazy things. But the gear, the sneakers, how did he get 6 miles in through that brush without tearing his clothes to shreds? Without a pack. I reached my campsite. My tent was there, undisturbed. I made a decision. I was leaving in the morning. Screw the elk. I was not going to sleep comfortably knowing there was a deranged drifter wandering around my grid square. I packed up my cooking gear. I checked the perimeter. I gathered firewood, building a pile closer to the tent than I normally would. As the light began to fade, the smell returned. The sweet, spoiled milk smell. It was stronger this time, and it was coming from inside the treeline, right where I had come from. I did not build a fire. A fire blinds you to the dark. Instead, I sat in the tent, unzipped the mesh but kept the vestibule closed, sitting cross-legged on my sleeping bag with the Glock in my lap. 7:00 p.m. Pitch black. The rain had stopped, which was worse. Now I could hear every drip from the canopy, every rustle of the ferns. 8:15 p.m. I heard a snap. It was distinct. The sound of a heavy branch breaking under weight. It came from about 50 yards out, near where I had hung my food bag. I froze, holding my breath until my lungs burned. Bear, I thought. Has to be a bear. They smell the stroganoff. I waited for the huffing sound, or the heavy shuffling of paws. Instead, I heard whistling. It was low, melodic, and terrifyingly familiar. It was whistling the tune of the song I had been listening to in the truck. Bad Moon Rising by CCR. Do-do-do. Do-do-do. My hand shook as I gripped the pistol. This was not a bear. This was the guy. The guy in the flannel. He had followed me. I have a gun, I yelled. The shout tore my throat. Get out of here. I will shoot. The whistling stopped. Silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then, from directly behind my tent, maybe 5 feet away, a voice spoke. I have a gun, it whispered. It was my voice, recorded and played back. I will shoot, it whispered. I spun around, aiming the pistol at the tent wall. My finger tightened on the trigger. Show yourself. I screamed. Show yourself. The voice mimicked immediately, overlapping with my own echo. Then came the scratching. It started low on the tent fabric, near the ground. Slow, rhythmic scratching. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Like long fingernails dragging across the nylon. I scrambled back against the far side of the tent. Stop it! The scratching moved up the wall. It was too fast. It moved from the ground to the roof of the tent in a second. Something was crawling over the tent. I saw the fabric depression, the weight of something pressing down on the roof of the Hilleberg. It was heavy, maybe 200 pounds, pressed the nylon down inches from my face. I could see the outline of a hand? A paw? It looked like a hand, but the fingers were too long, too many joints. Panicked, I fired. BLAM. The gunshot was deafening in the confined space. The muzzle flash blinded me for a second. The weight vanished instantly. I heard a thud on the ground outside, then the sound of something tearing through the brush at incredible speed. Not on two legs. It sounded like a gallop. For legs. Crashing through the Devil-S Club like a bulldozer. I sat there, ears ringing, the smell of cordite mixing with that awful, sweet, rotting milk stench. I did not sleep. I did not blink. I sat with the gun pointed at the door, shivering violently. Not from cold. From a primal, bone-deep terror. Every few minutes I heard them, not just one, them, call and response. From the creek, a whistle. From the ridge, a mimic of a crow, but deeper, guttural. From the trees to my left, a baby crying, a literal infant crying. Wah, wah. I knew there was no baby. I knew it was a lure. Predators mimic prey to draw them in. I checked my watch every 30 seconds. 2:14 a.m., 2:15 a.m., 2:16 a.m. I recited the Fibonacci sequence in my head. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. I tried to force logic back into the world. As a group of people, I told myself. A cult. Hillbillies messing with me. But people do not run through dense undergrowth on all fours at 30 miles an hour in the dark. People do not smell like that. At 4:00 a.m., the activity moved closer again. I heard heavy breathing right outside the vestibule zipper. Sounded wet. Gurgling. Let me in, a voice said. It was not my voice this time. It was a woman's voice. Soft. Maternal. Please, honey. It's cold. Let me in. I squeezed my eyes shut. Do not listen. Do not listen. Open the door, David. My heart stopped. David is my name. I had not told the man in the flannel my name. My wallet was in the truck. My ID was in the truck. Nothing on me had my name. David. The voice cooed. Do not be rude. Then, a low, vibrating growl that I felt in my teeth. A sound so deep it was almost subsonic. It was not human. It was not bear. It was the sound of the earth grinding its teeth. I racked the slide of the Glock, ejecting the spent casing from earlier and chambering a fresh round. Come through that door and you die, I whispered. The growl stopped. A giggle. High-pitched and frantic. Then the footsteps walked away. Casual. Bipedal footsteps. Crunch. 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 Dawn broke like a bruised eye, purple and gray. I waited until full light, around 7:30 a.m., before I unzipped the door. I came out gun first. The campsite was trashed. My food bag, which had been hung 12 feet up on a branch, was gone. Not torn down, the rope was untied. Untied. I looked at the tent. On the rain fly, where I had seen the depression the night before, there was a smear of slime. Grayish, viscous fluid. I looked at the ground. The mud was churned up. I found footprints. They were bare feet. But they were wrong. They were long, maybe 14 inches. And the toes were splayed wide, and they dug deep into the mud like claws. But the arch was human. I did not pack. I left the tent. I left the sleeping bag. I left the stove. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and my bow. I kept the pistol in my hand. I ran. I covered the 6 miles back to the trail in 2 hours. I tore my clothes on thorns. I slipped and fell in the mud, bruising my ribs. I did not care. I just needed to get to the gray line of the gravel trail. When I finally burst onto the Hoh River Trail, I nearly tackled a group of hikers, 3 college kids in bright North Face jackets, laughing, drinking water. They stopped, staring at me. I must have looked like a maniac. Mud-covered, gun in hand, eyes wide. "Whoa, dude," one of them said, putting his hands up. "You okay?" I holstered the gun, breathing like a dying engine. "Bear?" I wheezed. "Aggressive bear. Turn around. Do not go back there." I did not wait for them to answer. I marched the 5 miles back to the truck without stopping. When I got to the parking lot, I locked myself inside the Ford F-150. I started the engine and cranked the heater. I checked the back seat. I locked the doors. Only then did I look at myself in the rearview mirror. There was blood on my face, a scratch from a branch. But it was the look in my eyes that scared me. I looked like the man in the flannel. Vacant. I drove. I did not stop in Forks. I did not stop in Port Angeles. I drove until I hit the ferry terminal in Bainbridge, surrounded by other cars, by civilization. I reported the aggressive bear to the ranger station the next day. I gave them the coordinates of my tent. I told them they could keep the gear. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through a local news site, a small article in the Peninsula Daily News. Search suspended for missing hiker. The search for 42-year-old Marcus Henderson, missing since early October, has been suspended due to inclement weather. Henderson was last seen near the Hoh River Visitor Center. There was a photo. It was him, the man in the flannel. Marcus Henderson. I read the details. Marcus had been a software engineer from Portland. He had vanished 3 weeks before my trip. 3 weeks. The man I saw, the man in the clean, wet flannel with the pristine sneakers, had been missing in the deep wilderness for 21 days when I saw him. He should have been dead. He should have been emaciated. And then I remembered the smell. Sweet, spoiled milk. The smell of decay masked by something else. I remembered his movements, the way he glided, the way his skin looked pasty and slack. I do not hunt anymore. I sold the bow. I sold the truck. I live in a condo in downtown Bellevue now on the 14th floor. I like the concrete. I like the security cameras. But sometimes, when it rains, and the window is cracked just enough to let the air in, I catch a scent. Just for a second. Sweet. Rotting. And I wonder if it's just the garbage trucks down in the alley. Or if things that learn to walk and talk like US can also learn to drive.